If you're looking to move from an hourly to a fixed fee model, I highly recommend that you do have some experience under your belt. Otherwise, you do risk losing money if you're not careful.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today's episode is all about fixed fee billing and whether or not it is for you. Fixed fee billing is also the same as flat fees. I know a lot of designers crave it, some are scared of it. So today, this is a rebroadcast of an extremely popular episode where I walk you through the pros and cons so you can figure out, is it really for you? Enjoy. Okay, guys. Fixed fees, sexy time, right? So many designers love the idea of moving from hourly billing structure to a fixed fee billing structure. I know that I did. So today I'm going to walk you through exactly what I went through, and I'm going to share the pros and cons of both types of billing structures and help you to determine if the fixed fee billing structure is right for you. So, my story. I started off running my design firm exactly replicating the model that I had been exposed to from the designer I had worked for, and that was hourly. So essentially, when I worked for this other designer, we would meet a new client. We'd say, here are the hourly rates, and let's roll. Very rarely did a client ask us to estimate how many hours it would be. We were very lucky. It was a very high-end clientele. And we would simply invoice them, every 2 weeks, every month for the time that we had billed, the time that we had tracked. And this would go on indefinitely. Then there came a time, usually towards the end, when the client was kind of like, how many more hours are left? What's left to do? Because they were getting that billing fatigue. Fast forward to me starting my business all on my own. I had worked in television briefly on a couple of TV shows, and that was a fixed fee, and they would pay me a fixed fee per episode. And at the time I thought, this is so great. It's so much money. In hindsight, if I'd actually tracked my hours, I probably lost money working on those TV shows. So the fixed fee model can be sexy up front, but unless you really know what you're doing, you can actually lose a lot of money. So when I was running my own design firm, when I first started it out and I was billing clients hourly, I modeled what I knew. I said, my hourly rate is, $125. It started at $95. Then I moved it up to $125. Then I think I was $150, $175, $215, $225. Who knows how I came up with the increments? I just did. And I would say, this is my hourly rate. Well, guess what? I didn't have those super high-end clients that didn't question money. My clients wanted to know what it was going to cost. But guess what? I had no frickin' clue. Because to be honest, even though I had been billing hourly for several years, I never looked back at how many hours it took to do a project. And when I would bill the hours, I would often discount. So even if I looked back at old invoices, it wasn't an accurate representation of the time I spent. I never used a time tracking app. I was just going the end of the day, or actually it was more like at the end of 2 weeks, I'd look back at my calendar and try to remember and recreate the hours that I had put into projects, which meant I was constantly undercharging for my time. And yet, even though I undercharged for my time, I would look at those invoices and I would have like sticker shock and panic that it was too much money. Because to me, $1,000 at that time was a lot of money. And so when I would put together an invoice and it would be like, $2,100 for time, I would panic. And I would discount. And I would discount behind the scenes. The clients didn't know I was discounting. And well, I probably wasn't making some good money. So then I realized I needed to estimate because people were asking. So I'm like, I'm going to do high-low. I had a friend in the city who was doing that. She would estimate her hours on the low end, and then she would estimate her hours on the high end. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant, because for sure I'll be somewhere in the middle. But because I hadn't tracked my hours, I really was guessing. I'm like, yeah, it'll probably take 5 hours to source the fabric for this living room. And okay, maybe another 3 hours to pick the lights and 10 hours for this. Yeah, 30 hours seems right. I was telling people that it would take 30 hours for me to design and decorate their entire main floor. Was I on something? Like, that is completely unrealistic, I know now in hindsight. It often takes hundreds of hours. And so I would say, 30 hours on the low end, maybe 75 hours on the high end. And the clients would say, okay, I'd like to be somewhere in between that. Say, sure, absolutely. But guess what? I was never between low and high. I was always over the high because I had way underestimated how many hours it would take me. And then the problem with that is that then I would have the most uncomfortable conversations with clients because I hated talking about money. I hated confrontation. The last thing I wanted to do was discuss it. So I would just discount because I wanted to avoid the situation altogether. Hands up, nod your head if you know what I'm talking about. Clients would say, this is more than we discussed. We wanted to be da-da-da-da here, there, like what's left to bill for? And of course, I hadn't even finished the project. So then what would I do? I would underbill for the remaining hours because I just wanted to keep them happy and I didn't want to encounter more difficult conversations. It was a mess. Then I started having assistants working for me, junior designers, assistant designers. And that was a little bit easier for me to bill out because they had to bill me. And so when I had my first contract employee, she would send me an invoice every 2 weeks for her hours and I would have to pay it. So then I would take those hours and any hour I could, I would put in the invoice to my clients. But even then I wouldn't bill it all because sometimes I felt like, well, we should have been able to do that faster. Or I don't really think it's fair because I did have a tea when I was at Kravit and I was talking to our reps, so I won't count that extra hour. Or, there was a lot of traffic getting to site, so it's not really fair that I charge them for all that time. That's not their fault. So whose fault is it? I mean, I grossly undercharged and undervalued my service. So in that case, for me, the hourly wasn't working. Now, in hindsight, I know why it wasn't working. It's because I wasn't frickin' tracking my hours, valuing my worth, and educating our clients on the real cost of the fees. But that takes time. So when I encountered the fixed fee system, I was like, this is what I need in my life. It's going to eliminate all my headaches. I don't have to track my hours anymore. False, by the way. That's what I thought. Turns out, couldn't be more wrong. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. And immediately I started charging more money. So immediately I assumed, wow, we are like killing it. We're making so much more money. I went from making, and I've shared this in my free live trainings. I talk a lot about this, how I went from billing so little to so much more. But I went from billing like $2,500 for a renovation. From that, let's say $25,000 to maybe $5,000 for a renovation to like $13,000 plus the first time. So I'm thinking I'm rolling in the dough. This is amazing. I don't need to track my hours. We're for sure making money. But did I really know? I had no clue. I didn't really know. So it got worse because then my employees or my contract employees would send me their invoices and I wouldn't enter them anywhere. I didn't really need to because I wasn't billing to my client. So I was not on top of the hours my team was putting in versus how much money our clients paid us. We were fine. We were in the black. The company wasn't losing money, but we were never really making a big profit. So today I want to talk to you now about the differences between the hourly and the fixed fee billing structure. And then we'll look at if it's right for you to switch from hourly to fixed fee. So my experience, I think, helps to shine a bit of a light on a lot of the reasons that designers want to move from hourly to fixed fee. And oftentimes designers are concerned because they don't know how much to charge. Hourly seems a lot more straightforward, right? Because everyone talks about what's your hourly rate? What's your hourly rate? If you're looking to move from an hourly to a fixed fee model, I highly recommend that you do have some experience under your belt. Otherwise, you do risk losing money if you're not careful. Over a year ago, I was feeling like we were doing pretty well. We'd had some successful years. And I had somebody come in, actually it was Marilee, my operations manager now. She came in and said, well, what's your project profitability? And I said, well, what do you mean? I don't know. I don't know how to calculate that. That's kind of impossible to calculate. Actually, you can't do that because in my industry, it's not like other industries and you totally can't do that. And she's like, well, I think you totally can. And so we started to look into it. And she's like, well, where are you tracking your hours and your team's hours? And I said, well, I mean, sometimes and then we used to track them in design docs, but then it was so cumbersome and it was so time consuming. I had to be on top of everyone. They weren't entering their hours. And it just I just felt like, I don't need to know that. As long as I know over the course of the year that we're profitable, that's enough, right? She's like, no, absolutely not. You need to track your hours. And so we started to track the hours diligently. It's taken us over a year to get into a really good habit and system. And even then, sometimes we fall off. And I have to remind our team to make sure your hours are updated in design docs at the end of the week so that Alberto, our office manager, can pull those hours and we can use those hours to see where we're at against the total hours we estimated for the project. And what we found last year is 2 or 3 decent sized projects, we actually lost money on our fees. Yep. We lost money, meaning the company had to pay out of pocket to its employees to service a client because the client did not pay us enough money. And that was because our hours were way out of whack. And some of the reasons were our own and some were client driven and some were contractor driven. But it made us realize if we're going to charge a fixed fee, 2 things have to happen. 1, we absolutely have to track our hours. And 2, we need to ensure that we are charging enough money up front to cover the hours. Because if you're not charging hourly, it's not like you can recoup that. Yep, I know, right? Pretty freaking discouraging. So I want to just talk about the pricing models that exist. So the way I see it, let me have a sip of my tea. There are 3 pricing models. Grab a pen if you're not driving, or if you're not walking or running or, operating heavy machinery. There is 1, the hourly pricing model, 2, the fixed fee pricing model, and 3, the hybrid pricing model. So I'm going to walk you through the pros and cons of each. And I just want you to listen, absorb. You can write these down, but I want you to just think about this and see if these are pros and cons that you have witnessed. And if not, there might be some new ones. So hourly fees. There, realistically, is a low risk of losing money. Now, I say that with one caveat. That is only true if you're charging for every hour, right? You won't likely lose money as you ideally charge for every hour that you work on a project, but you must collect a retainer, I highly recommend, up front so you don't have any clients that you need to chase for payment. I'm not going to get into that today, but I have had that happen to me where clients disappeared at the end and I had to chase them to get any final payment. I even had someone just never pay it. So that is a pro. You won't lose money if you're charging for every single hour you work, you and your team work. There's no question that you're working for free, unless you're working for free and you're not charging. The second pro is transparency. Your client knows exactly where their money goes. It's very clear. It's a traditional model. A lot of people understand the hourly model. Number 3, no stress scope creep. So there won't be an awkward conversation about billing for something that's out of scope because every hour is billed anyways. So if you're in the middle of implementation for a project and your client's like, oh, hey, do you think you could just come and help me? I've got a couple light fixtures that I really can't decide between for my daughter's room. I know you guys aren't doing that, but like, can I like borrow your ear for half an hour? Absolutely. I'm just going to bill for an extra half hour from being on site. So there's none of that awkward, like, well, they didn't pay for this time, so how am I going to bill it extra? I need to make sure I send them my out of scope agreement because this is an out of scope ask and I have to charge them for it and I have to keep track of that separately. So big pro, no stress, scope creep. And 4, no upfront sticker shock. So the client most of the times is not expected to pay a large lump sum of money because, for example, in my fixed fee, we require the payment 100% upfront. So as a result, it's less scary. You're probably not going to scare them away. Sure, you might need a retainer or you definitely need a retainer at the beginning, but it's not the same thing. So there's no upfront sticker shock. Here are the cons to hourly billing. We have a tendency to discount our hours. You need to ensure you're billing for every hour you work. Otherwise, you run the risk of underbilling for your time. I talked about this. This was the example I followed for many years. I underbilled or discounted my hours. I talked about discounting hours in my podcast episode with Katie Raffetto, who's from the Bay Area, and she talked about how she said she learned from somebody once, if you are going to discount your hours, you need to make sure you don't hide that and you let the client know they're getting a discount, which I think is really great advice. You guys can go listen to her episode, Katie Raffetto. But in general, we do have a tendency to discount our hours when it's hourly because we have our own sticker shock. Second con is that the client may object to hours spent. So if you're specific and detailed in your invoices, you risk clients disputing your time and you may end up discounting hours to make them happy. Number 3, there's no clear total cost for the client to budget for upfront. To me, this is a big one. Unless you're estimating how many hours it takes, it's really hard for clients to budget how much money they need to set aside for your fees. And we get this a lot where clients are calling and they're just doing exploratory work because they know they want to work with us. So they want to know how much money they need to save up in order to work with us. If I just say, I don't know, we charge $2.25 an hour, that's not very helpful. And then the last con I would say is the invoicing fatigue. What I mentioned happened when I used to work for the other designer towards the end of the project. You know, over time, it can get kind of tiring, especially if you're invoicing regularly. So whether it's biweekly or monthly invoicing, it can start to feel time consuming on both sides. It's time consuming on your end and on the client's end. And sometimes it feels like it will never end. And the clients can sometimes become fatigued, right? And they could walk away before the project is done or decide, you know what, I don't need you to help with the last remaining bits. I've got this. And then you don't get that final finished product. Okay, that's hourly. If I could ask you a question right now, it would be, would you agree? And what have I missed? But because it's a podcast and I can't see your faces like I can in my courses, then I'm just going to keep moving on. But that would be a question I would ask. So feel free to share that information inside Designers Meetup. Okay, fixed fees. Pros, no billing fatigue. They pay once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. Number 2, there's a certainty of cost, right? So this pro speaks directly to the con of hourly, where clients know exactly what it's going to cost them up front and they can budget for it ahead of time. Another pro, you only talk about money once. This was probably the main reason that I switched to fixed fee billing. I really felt uncomfortable having money conversations. So you can get that awkward conversation about money over with early and focus on what you do best. And then less administration time is required. That's the last pro that I have here listed. Less admin time required. Holy heck, I can't tell you how many hours were spent back and forth, us trying to figure out, oh, you know, that invoice, oh God, it's kind of high. Do you think, you know, maybe we don't charge 4 hours for sourcing those lights? Can we just charge maybe 3.5? And I think we should change the description here just to add more value so they really understand what it was that we did. Like, oh my Lord. So much admin time. If you collect your design fees up front, or at least partially with a set schedule in a fixed fee, you don't have to regularly send invoices and follow up on payments, send reminders. This frees you up like a lot of time to focus on the actual design and not the administration. Okay, so sounds perfect, right? Let's all do fixed fee billing. Well, there are cons. So here we go. The first con. There is a very high risk that you will lose money if you're not accurately pricing your services, because people can take advantage when it is a fixed fee. You need to be super accurate about what's included and what is not, so that you don't find yourself working overtime for the same amount of money. This leads into the next con, which is that you must, and I say this is a con because I personally have never enjoyed it, and I don't know many designers who are good at it or enjoy it. If you're not one of those designers, then heck, you've got your life figured out. But I would say the con is that you have to diligently track your hours. Ugh. So there can be a tendency to want to stop tracking your hours, like I did. But the only way to know if you're profitable is if you track hours against the fixed fee. We had a project, no exaggeration, where we noticed that the fixed fee we collected, when we divided that by our hourly rate, it should have been, I think we said 300 hours. And the hours that were tracked by the entire team were like 575, 600 hours. Shoot, that's almost double. So then that basically means you're working at half your hourly rate. And does that even cover your staff? So you have to diligently track your hours. You do in both, but there's a tendency in a fixed fee, because you don't have to do it to get paid, to not do it. Whereas with hourly, you have to do it to get paid. The third con would be scope creep, because I know a lot of designers feel uncomfortable in these situations when things are added on, how to handle it, what to do. So scope creep can happen and potentially, just potentially, could lead to the loss of money if it's not handled correctly. So when you charge a fixed fee, scope creep can cause stress. You need a system to bill extra for out of scope work. To me, this isn't really a con, because once you get a system, it's set and you go. But there is, until you kind of get in that habit and you have a system that works for scope creep, actually, maybe that would be a good podcast. It can be stressful and you can lose money, because what we've done in the past, I feel like I've made all the mistakes. What is wrong with me? Maybe I just made all these mistakes so that I could be here today to share with you. That's my glasses half full analogy of my life. It's gotta be for something, right? Lord, we had a project in the beaches in Toronto, lovely project, beautiful. We didn't end up photographing it because they ended up furnishing it themselves. Yeah, I know. But it was a beautiful home, and actually we did like a couple pieces of furniture. Anyways, wasn't worth photographing, but loveliest clients. But they decided to take the furniture out. Like, we designed everything, they paid for the design, and they were like, you know what? We're just going to furnish it ourselves. We're just going to hire you to implement in the renovation. Fine, no problem. Every time my intermediate designer was at the house, she would get bombarded by the client with questions. The client would bring her iPad and say, I was looking at this couch on Crate and Barrel. What do you think about this? And do you think this table's going to work? If I do this table in this wood, will it match the sideboard? And so my designer would come back to the office. She was like, oh my God, Rebecca, like every time I go, she has like a million questions for me, and she's sending me emails, and we're not even supplying this stuff for her. That finally, it was taking extra hours of my designer's time that was not billed because we had a fixed fee. So that would really push us to develop a system. And I can tell you that just saying that we're going to send you our out of scope agreement for any additional, like if you want help with any of these additional, we'd be happy to help you. We'll have the office send you our out of scope agreement. It shut her up. The client stopped asking questions. Because clients will sometimes push and try to take advantage. Even the best, they have best intentions, but we all do it, right? Well, you're just here now. Like, it's not going to take a second. So scope creep can happen. And then the last con, which is a pretty big one, I would say, is sticker shock. And to me, I would say that this would be one of the bigger cons, because oftentimes the fixed fees look higher because you're collecting them all, or you're telling them what the total cost is. That sticker shock of one lump sum can sometimes scare off some clients. It also can scare you off and cause you to then discount that fee because it seems like so much. And it can make you want to reduce the price, which I've done. I've calculated the fee and I'm like, oh, shoot, that seems high. I mean, that's crazy. Who's going to pay, I don't know, $50,000 for us to design that? There is no way. I'm going to reduce that to 42. Even that feels high. Ooh, should it be 39? Oh yeah, in the 30s feels about right. Has anyone ever done that? Fixed fee billing? Yeah, that's a messy place to be. So our sticker shock tends to sometimes be different than our clients. So we have to remember that. Okay, then the last, let's take a breath. I'm taking a breath because that was a lot. Pros and cons of, so how do you feel? If I was with you in person, I would say, does that still appeal to you? Do you want to do fixed fee billing? Because it still appeals to me. However, there's another option, and that is the hybrid approach. And I have to say, I'm a really big fan of this, especially for those people looking to transition to fixed fee until they really know their numbers and really have the clients that are willing to invest in that lump sum payment. It's a hybrid. So a pro to a hybrid would be partially fixed fee for maybe a phase, and then maybe hourly for another phase. So to me, the pro of this is it's the best of both worlds. You can minimize the regular billing of perhaps in the most creative part of your service offering, like during your design phase, if you charge a fixed fee for design and maybe hourly for implementation. And the other pro to this is you can decide when you bill hourly and when a fixed fee is more suitable. So if you feel comfortable charging fixed fee for design, that's great because you can control those parameters. The client's not involved. You don't have a contractor to deal with. There are less hidden variables. Then maybe you do hourly from implementation until you really start to get a sense of what things cost, because with implementation or project management or whatever you want to call it, you are possibly running around meeting someone last minute. It's hard to anticipate those hours. I'd say this is a popular model. The con to this model, though, is that it could be confusing. So confusion is possible with your client, because if you make your pricing model too confusing, you might lose a client who doesn't fully understand. I know I've been in a situation where I thought I was super clear on how we priced our services, and the client's like, sorry, can you just repeat? I'm not fully understanding A, B, or C. And then the other con is that you are shifting gears internally, which means it can be hard to sometimes remember where you are at a given project and who is on what billing plan. So if you were doing some projects on hourly billing, some are fixed fee, it starts to get confusing. And I think there can be more time spent making things clear than needs to be. Also, you might forget that, we're now in the fixed fee portion of this project's done. I should be billing hourly. So, although you'll be tracking it, right? Okay, those are the pros and cons of all three of the models. Here's what I'm going to tell you to how you can decide if fixed fee billing is right for you, because I know it is very popular and a lot of people want to do it. First of all, I hope that just seeing or hearing the pros and cons was helpful. But second of all, you do need to understand your process. So, and this is something that I walk designers through inside Power of Process, is how to establish the process that works for you, because a billing structure and a process need to be aligned. And what I love about our fixed fee billing is that it aligns with our 3-phased process really nicely. So it's super clear and easy to communicate, and it feels a lot less time consuming on an administration perspective for us. But then I'm going to tell you, you need to review your hours. So if you have any experience running a design project, look back. And if you don't use an app to track your hours, and maybe you're just tracking them through your invoices like I used to do, that's okay. Pull up, and this is going to take a little bit of homework, but pull up all the invoices from past projects, group them together, and look at how many hours you charged for that project. And then look at what the project entailed. And then start to think, if I had charged a fixed fee for this, what would that fee be? Remember, I can't believe I'm saying this, spreadsheets are your friend. I sound like somebody else when I say that. It's so true, however. When you have a spreadsheet, you can start plugging in, like put project A, how many hours? And if you can do it based on type of task, even better. Project B, and start tracking and have it for reference so you can look back and see. There's so much information in our past that we can use to help us be better in the future. That's something I never used to do. I still don't love doing that aspect, but I do have to do those reviews. Let's look back at the project. Let's have a post-project review. How many hours were spent? How many did we anticipate spending? How does this compare to the last project that was a similar size? Because you want to continually be growing. You want to be able to slowly start charging more money, of course, but you have to make money. So if you want to move to billing, you really need to know your numbers. You need to know your hours. Some people follow a square footage. That's how they calculate their fixed fee based on square footage. Some people calculate their fixed fee simply by doing that, looking back at past project hours and pulling the fee based on the hours they project for the next new project. I know some designers that do their hourly pricing based on square footage, and then they double check or reference it against the hours that they think it's going to take. I've done that before where I had a square footage price and I got a certain number, but then my design team said, no, it's going to be more like this many hours. So then I found somewhere in between for the fee. So you need to make sure that you're doing that due diligence, because the last thing I want is for you to lose money. We are in business to make money. This is a business, not a hobby. And I'm here to support you as this business grows, as you start to make more money for yourself so that you can survive this recession, whatever it looks like, and come through the other side stronger and a much more confident business owner. Let me know how you like this episode. Please leave me a review. I would love an iTunes review, or wherever you listen to these podcasts. If you could give me a little 5 stars, let me know what part of it you like. Why do you listen to my podcast? And share it with your friends, screenshot it, put it on social media, let others know you're listening and that there's value here, so we can help more designers charge more money, because the more designers that charge more money, it's going to be a lot easier for us to charge it too. Okay, have a great day. I'll see you soon.